Welcome to Storyflix. In this video, we will explain Real Girl. This movie tells the story of a high school student who enjoys animation and video games in the virtual world, but he doesn't enjoy his real life. People at his school don't even know he exists. One day, he met a beautiful girl while cleaning the pool at his school. Is she going to change how he sees love in the real world? Let's find out in Real Girl. Real Girl started when a young man named Hikaru Tsutsui was focusing on his laptop screen while commenting on the latest anime film. It then made his 2D waifu, Azamichi, feel jealous and angry because she thought Hikaru had an affair with a character from another anime. Because of that, Hikaru then convinced his 2D waifu by trying to seduce her. Meanwhile, his younger brother, who was outside his room, thought Hikaru was out of his mind because he often talked alone in his room. Hikaru really likes anime and video games in the virtual world and doesn't enjoy his real life. He spent most of his time in his room, playing video games or watching anime, rather than interacting with other people. That day, Hikaru started his day with some bad luck, like accidentally splashed by hot water. The road he used to take to go to school is suddenly closed because it was being repaired, and he is also faced with the choice of helping an old woman who has fallen or saving a kitten. Azamichi then tells Hikaru that living in the real world is very troublesome because he is faced with various difficult choices. Hikaru decided to help the old woman and the kittens, causing him to be almost late for school. Meanwhile in class, one of Hikaru's classmates, a young man named Yudo Ito, said the same thing as Azamichi. Like Hikaru, Yudo also prefers to watch anime and play video games than hang out with his friends. Not long after that, the two of them were visited by delinquent students led by Mitsuya Takanashi. At first Mitsuya mocked Yudo because he was wearing a cute cat ear headband. After that, Mitsuya told Hikaru to replace him and went to the teacher's room. Arriving at the teacher's room, Hikaru met a girl named Iroha Ikarashi who was also summoned to the teacher's room. Hikaru and Iroha are then punished for cleaning the swimming pool. Hikaru thought that a beautiful and popular girl like Iroha would definitely not come to serve her sentence. But as it turned out, Iroha had really come. Due to an incident, they suddenly fell into the swimming pool. While drying his wet clothes, Hikaru seemed to be standing away from Iroha, who invited him to get acquainted. Seeing Hikaru flustered, Iroha then told him to date her. Hearing this, Hikaru suddenly felt annoyed and scolded Iroha, thinking that the girl just wanted to play with his feelings and didn't really want to date him. Rejected by Hikaru, Iroha then left him. The next day, Hikaru told Yudo what he had experienced yesterday with Iroha. Yudo then asked Hikaru to immediately apologize to Iroha. Following Yudo's advice, Hikaru then follows Iroha to a bookstore where Iroha is suddenly accused of being a thief by one of the bookstore employees. Even though Iroha had already proven that she wasn't a thief by taking out all her belongings in her bag, the bookstore employees didn't necessarily believe her. Seeing Iroha in a state of urgency, Hikaru then defended her by saying that he had been following Iroha and she had not stolen anything. But after that, the store employees reported to the police about Hikaru stalking Iroha, so he immediately ran away from there. The next day, Iroha came to Hikaru in his class and again asked him to date her publicly. But again Hikaru rejected her. One of Hikaru's classmates, Arisa Ishino, then urges Hikaru to go after Iroha. Hikaru rushed after Iroha and apologized to her. Although Hikaru is still shocked to hear that Iroha insists on dating him and thinks she just wants to play with him, he is finally willing to have a love affair with Iroha for 6 months according to her request. Since then, Hikaru and Iroha have been officially dating. Iroha then asked Hikaru to pick her up every morning to go to school together and hand in hand along the way. Iroha also told about things that lovers usually do, such as eating together, going on dates, hugging, and even kissing. That night, Hikaru seems to be contemplating in his room and thinking about how difficult it is to date in the real world with all the rules and demands of his girlfriend. Azamichi then incites Hikaru by saying that Iroha wants to play with him and only oppress him. Meanwhile outside the room, Hikaru's parents and his younger brother, Kaoru, are seen eavesdropping on Hikaru's monologue with Azamichi in his imagination. The next day, during lunchtime at school, Hikaru, who was sitting with Iroha, immediately became the center of attention of the other students because of their closeness. Mitsuya was no exception. He then came to their table and told Iroha to end his relationship with Hikaru and date him. Mitsuya even blatantly mocks Hikaru's penchant for anime and video games and says he is much better than Hikaru. But Iroha didn't heed Mitsuya's words. Hikaru did not necessarily remain silent hearing himself being made fun of by Mitsuya and intended to hit him. But then, Iroha suddenly collapsed and lay weak and helpless. She asked Hikaru to take her to a male doctor named Mabuchi at the hospital. Hikaru rushed to carry Iroha and ran to the hospital so that his girlfriend could immediately get medical treatment. Hikaru looks very worried about Iroha's condition at the hospital, even though she has fully recovered after receiving treatment from Dr. Mabuchi. Seeing Hikaru really worried about her, Iroha felt very happy because this was the first time she had a boyfriend who really cared about her. A few days later, Hikaru asks Arisa for advice on dating because he has never dated a girl in real life. But when it's time to date, Iroha finds Arisa's advice about dating really boring. Iroha then asked Hikaru to take her to his house to meet his family. Hikaru's family looks stunned because this is the first time Hikaru invites a beautiful girl to visit his house. Because Hikaru invited his girlfriend to the house, his family then held a welcoming party for Iroha and asked how she came to be in a relationship with Hikaru. Iroha also confesses that she has fallen in love with Hikaru since the first time they met. Iroha then asked Hikaru to show her his bedroom. Hearing this, Hikaru and his family unanimously told Iroha that Hikaru didn't have a room because they both didn't want Iroha to see Hikaru's room filled with the 2D character Azamichi who he considered a waifu. But Iroha didn't run out of her mind. She pretended to want to go to the toilet and quietly headed to Hikaru's room, which was on the top floor. After entering Hikaru's room, Iroha seemed amazed by all the action figure collections and posters that filled his room. On the other hand, Hikaru looks flabbergasted that Iroha isn't what he expected. She actually appreciates his passion for anime and video games and doesn't think Hikaru is a weird otaku. After watching anime together, Hikaru then drove Iroha home and she lightly kissed Hikaru on the cheek before entering the house. The next day, Hikaru tells Yuto about his successful date and asks Arisa for advice on the gift he will give Iroha. But this time, Arisa first asked Hikaru to help her to date Mitsuya. When Hikaru was working part-time wearing a mascot costume at an amusement park, he accidentally met Iroha, who helped him calm a little girl who was crying because she was separated from her mother. But Iroha didn't know that Hikaru was wearing the mascot costume. After finally returning the little girl to her mother, Iroha then left, and it turned out that Iroha was at the amusement park with Dr. Mabuchi. Seeing their closeness, Hikaru then questioned the relationship between Iroha and Dr. Mabuchi, who seemed to be more than just a doctor and a patient. The next day, Hikaru texted Iroha, saying that he couldn't pick her up. Since then, Hikaru seems to always avoid Iroha when he is at school. One day, when Hikaru is alone in the school garden, he meets a student named Sumi Ayato who is also very fond of anime and video games. Even Sumi also really likes the character of Azamichi, just like Hikaru. They then engage in an exciting chat because they have the same passion. On the other hand, apparently Iroha saw the closeness of Hikaru and Sumi, who were busy chatting. Mitsuya, who was next to her, then tried to instigate Iroha to end her love affair with Hikaru. While coming home from school, Iroha and Hikaru accidentally crossed paths on the street. Still, Hikaru apparently wasn't sensitive to a woman's feelings, so when Iroha was jealous and sulky, he turned cold, avoided her even more, and allowed all these misunderstandings to drag on. In the end, the two of them became more and more awkward and acted like strangers who didn't know each other. After that, Hikaru went to Mitsuya and told him that he had broken up with Iroha. Hearing this, Mitsuya actually felt insulted because he felt slighted by Hikaru and then punched him to the ground. Seeing her boyfriend lying helpless, Iroha then slapped Mitsuya and took Hikaru to the hospital. Dr. Mabuchi then met Hikaru and asked what he had done to change Iroha drastically. After dating Hikaru, Iroha looked more cheerful and happy. Hearing this, Hikaru also felt touched, not expecting to bring such a big change to Iroha. Not long after, Iroha also met Hikaru with Mitsuya, who looked battered. Iroha then embraced her boyfriend affectionately, and Hikaru also apologized to her for having misunderstood and making her sad. The next day, Hikaru introduces Iroha and Yuto to Sumi, where he tells Sumi that Iroha is his girlfriend. Sumi immediately felt very shocked when she found out that Hikaru had a very beautiful girlfriend in the real world. While on the other hand, Yuto seemed to really like Sumi from the first time they met. When she saw Hikaru involved in an exciting conversation with Sumi, Iroha immediately felt jealous and brought it up to Arisa, who was sitting next to her. Arisa then suggests that they all go on a picnic together so that Iroha and Hikaru become closer and inseparable. Long story short, Hikaru and Iroha finally went on a picnic with Arisa, Mitsuya, Yuto, and Sumi. Sumi, who had liked Hikaru from the start, observed Hikaru and Iroha who were joking and looking happy. However, unbeknownst to her, Yuto secretly observed her and felt sad because Sumi actually liked Hikaru. That night, when everyone was gathered outside, Hikaru suddenly felt unwell and decided to return to the inn. After that, Sumi went in there and found Hikaru sleeping on the sofa. With soundless steps, Sumi approached him and held his hand. But then, Iroha caught her and looked so annoyed that she decided to leave. Knowing that something was wrong, because Iroha looked gloomy, when she left the inn, Arisa rushed to wake Hikaru and told him to go after his girlfriend. On the other hand, Yuta goes to Sumi who is sobbing, feels sorry for Iroha, and reveals to Yuto that she likes Hikaru. Yuto then tells everyone, including Hikaru, that Sumi likes Hikaru. But Hikaru politely refused Sumi's feelings and said he already had Iroha as his girlfriend and loved her very much. Hikaru finally finds Iroha sitting alone, where he then reveals to Iroha that he really loves her. Meanwhile, Iroha also said the same thing, where she felt very happy when Hikaru was by her side and they both kissed passionately. Long story short, while celebrating a Halloween party at school, Iroha reveals to Hikaru that she has a dangerous disease and must immediately undergo surgery to cure her illness. However, the operation also carries a high risk and her recovery is also uncertain after that. On Halloween night, it was exactly 6 months since they first met and decided to date. Iroha then ended his love affair with Hikaru and asked him to forget it. Hikaru just had tears in his eyes, speechless to hear Iroha ending their relationship just like that. After that, Iroha left Hikaru who was still silent in the crowd watching the departure of the girl he loved. 5 years have passed since that incident, and now Hikaru has worked as a company employee. Hikaru was still thinking about Iroha. Every now and then after work, he visits the place where he used to pick up Iroha when they were still at school and hopes to meet Iroha there. However, no one was there, so he thought that the happy ending of a love story only happened in the 2D world, not in the real world like his love story with Iroha. One day, Hikaru accidentally crossed paths with Iroha, but when he called her, Iroha didn't recognize him and immediately left Hikaru. Hikaru then meets Dr. Mabuchi who tells him that Iroha lost almost all of her memory after undergoing brain surgery. Dr. Mabuchi then asks Hikaru to forget about Iroha because he will soon marry her. When Iroha went back to Hikaru and asked about himself, Hikaru instead said she had the wrong person and didn't know her, so that Iroha wouldn't have to remember him anymore and could live a new life with Dr. Mabuchi. That night, Hikaru holds a reunion with his friends from high school and tells what happened to Iroha and Dr. Mabuchi's plans to marry her. All her friends look sad that Iroha has lost her memory, which means she doesn't remember them and the moments they spent together in high school. Long story short, Iroha and Dr. Mabuchi's wedding day arrived, which was also attended by Arisa, Mitsuya, Yuto, and Sumi. Arisa then takes the mic and tells about her high school memories with Iroha and her other friends. After that, Yuto gave a gift parcel to Iroha. Elsewhere, Hikaru seems to be involved in a conversation with Ezamichi, where he says that he will never forget Iroha and will continue to love her. Hikaru is determined to fight for his love and get Iroha back. Meanwhile, Iroha, who opened Yuto's gift, which was none other than Ezamichi's toy wand, instantly recalled all the moments she had with Hikaru. She immediately cancelled the wedding and rushed to meet Hikaru. Iroha and Hikaru meet again at a Halloween party, where they finally re-express their feelings for each other and unite in love forever. The moral message of this film is never hesitating to fight for someone you love if it is worth fighting for, because everyone has the right to their happiness.